Hello, everybody. I am Scott, coming to you today from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And I'm Andy, back in the UK again.
Good to see you, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I like this time of year when the weather is changing and it's getting a bit colder and you start to put your jackets on again.
Yeah. I've been doing a little bit of running again, and as soon as the temperature comes down, the speed goes up. So it makes me happy for that. Yeah. We're still experimenting with our YouTube streaming here, so bear with us, folks, as we see how that works out. But this is the T and Timbits podcast, global perspectives on business development to help you prosper. This is October, and we are talking all things content and branding. And today, this episode, we are going to get into a little bit more conversation around knowing your audience and what resonates with them. I'm here at a trade show in Milwaukee and have been trying desperately to unlock that strategy. So we'll get into that. But before we do, Andy, I think it's your turn to give us some of your reflections.
Absolutely, yes. I had a conversation a couple of weeks back now with a company that I've known for many years, and I've worked with the man who runs this business off and on, probably for about 10 years now, and he's one of these serial entrepreneurs. He starts lots of businesses, has lots of great ideas, invests in lots of different businesses in different areas, very often crossing into the areas that I work with, such as energy and maritime and so on. So this is why we stay in touch. But what I really found interesting about having a conversation with him, because we haven't spoken for a couple of years now, since we were last working together, and we just reconnected, and it was so fascinating to hear from him the steps and the journey that he's gone on of learning from one business, learning from one type of customers, bringing that into the next thing, and then bringing the next thing in and bringing the next thing in, surrounding himself with experts, listening to different opinions, not believing, despite his incredible global experience and success. I mean, this guy's a multi-millionaire, billionaire type guy. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's done incredibly well, and he's quite well known in his space. But he is so humble and so open to different ideas and different perspectives, and he doesn't feel that he always has to be the person at the top of the business running it and that he's the top guy. He surrounds himself with the people who are better than him, and I think that's a great leadership approach in any business. Never be afraid of working with people who are better than you. Don't be afraid of them. They are going to enhance you. They're going to help to make you more effective, help to make you grow, and everybody wins in that scenario. I far too often go into companies where I see sales leaders, managing directors, department leaders who are afraid of having anyone on their team who is more experienced or better than them, because they're afraid of losing their job. But that's not the way, that's not their role anyway. Their role is not to be the best salesperson in the sales team or be the best operations person in the operations department. Their role is to lead and coach and develop and help those people to be more effective and more efficient. And I think often leaders forget that because they get too drawn into their own thing, because they've maybe come up through the ranks, that they get scared that they're going to lose their role. But ironically, by surrounding yourself with people who are less competent or not developing people to be better, then the buck is going to fall on you, and people are going to see that you're a failure. So, it was just a good reminder having that conversation with him about how doing that and taking that approach of humbleness and openness and willingness to listen, willingness to learn, constant development, constant progression, that you can actually be much, much more successful than if you are thinking that you're the person at the top of the tree who has all the answers.
Yeah. And, I think it is probably a familiar trait if you're one of those serial entrepreneurs, because the only way you get to do your entrepreneurial thing over and over and over and over and over again is if you build up something that is self-sustaining, and you have people, in place to be able to then yourself exit, move on,
correct.
other thing. Yeah. It's not exclusively the way it's done. I mean, the other template is you build this thing and it's all yours, and you assemble it through, brute force or inspiration and your own ingenuity, but then you're sort of tied in usually, and it's a little bit more difficult. So it's a good reminder for all of us, though. It doesn't have to be an entrepreneur that
no, absolutely
on that. So getting into our topic for this episode, talking about knowing your audience and what resonates. So we talked last episode a little bit more about the buying journey, which has to do with sort of that that flow that you want to nurture somebody through, and that requires knowing your audience. But here we're getting into, I think, that a little bit deeper, and I just again want to emphasize the sort of what resonates part. I think in our industry, in my industry in particular, that's the big challenge right now, is the resonate part. And I think that there's a little bit of a difference between something that resonates and something that sort of endears the audience or moves them into action. And I think sometimes you need to sort of play the long game, because you may, part of knowing the audience and the challenges and what resonates with them means you need to kind of support a little bit of the challenge that they're facing right now, which may mean that the business comes later. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's a very valid point, and everything that you just said is sort of part of what I'm about to say as well. So forgive me if it sounds a bit of repetition, but essentially, when I'm thinking about audience or encouraging, the companies that I work with to think about their audience, it's very much about defining this ideal customer profile. What is your ideal customer? What do they look like? And that's very much down to not just the roles that they have, but as you said, like the problems that they have and the context that those problems appear. And that kind of leads itself quite well into the segmentation aspect, because I think having customer segments is also very important within your ideal customer profile. And what I think most companies fail at is that they choose segments by industry.
Yeah.
Now, I am of the opinion that the best way to do a segmentation is to do it by the problems that they face and the context of those problems, and it's not just the industry, because there are often a lot of crossovers and things. Sorry, what's that?
I said it's like you've been following me around for the past 2 days.
Yeah, it's often the case. Yeah. But then the third thing that is also very important, because it's often forgotten when you're talking about the audience, is you've defined your ideal customer profile, and the challenges they face, the context it's in, what type of work that they're doing, what sort of roles they have. That's fine. But you also still need to define who is in the buying committee, who are the people within those organizations, within that ideal customer profile, who are actually going to be making those decisions. And the larger the company, the harder that becomes, and the more complex that becomes, and the more diverse those buying committees become. Take, for example, some of the large maritime companies that I have. They have decision-making that is in multiple countries, within multiple organizations, not just in the head office, because you have to make sure that everything that you're selling, especially on a global level, that you are considering the impact of that. Who is affected by it? What is the chain, in a way, of the impact of the change that you're looking to bring into that organization to improve it, to change it, to challenge what they're currently doing.
That's a good point. Like that's again getting back to like what resonates is sort of understanding the dynamic nature of some of those challenges that they're facing. And especially in larger accounts, larger businesses, that's not going to just be one thing. It may be one business, and sticking with the maritime example, your customers are also global, so it would seem like it's sort of still a kind of a one size fits all problem set, but still you've got cultures oceans apart, even though it's quote unquote the same transaction. So understanding, and I like what you said at the beginning of what you were saying there too, was we're not talking about defining the ideal customer as the segment. There are segments within the ideal customer, and you need to think about those individuals, and those individual segments, subsegments within that ideal customer profile, and think specifically, and you have to come up with adjustments to your strategy to align your messaging with those subgroups as well, which doesn't require that you have any special awareness of that person or that individual audience segment. It just requires that you maintain your posture of curiosity. So you just have to make sure that you confirm an answer that you get or an assumption that you have with each of those audience segments, because it's not going to be the same. It might be the same problem, but it might be a different perspective based on those different individuals within that customer profile.
I think that's a good point. And part of some of those things that resonate is, of course, if you can tell stories to these people that resonate with them, that do talk to them in their language and give them examples of the types of things that you have solved for other companies in a similar area. And that the biggest trap that I think companies fall into as well is that you have this one size fits all content, and it's far too generic. If you can go into kind of like micro case studies and do those segments and include numbers, real numbers, real examples. And it doesn't have to be, big wow factor, because as soon as you start going down that line, if you choose only the really exceptional cases, it's going to mislead people and also potentially put people off. So combining those realistic case studies that are very targeted and very niche, but also not with your own internal jargon mixed in there. It's got to be very much, using the customer's language, using the language that you get from the discussions that you've had with them and the talks that you've had, because realistically, every message that you send to a customer, every conversation that you're having, every communication, it is a measurable next step to something else on a journey. And so this, everything has to be thought about, and it needs to be tied in. So case studies tied into particular sales stages and things like that. If you can build a structure and you can build a journey and you can build a map that you take people on, and there's a very clear roadmap that they're going on, and then you've got content, you've got good structure, and you've got good communication processes around all of that is focused on the customer and the problems that you solve for them and why that's relevant and why that's important, then your sales process and that journey is going to make a lot of sense to them and a lot of sense to your team internally.
So this is right in line with the kind of messaging that we're trying to deliver right now. With when I'm here at this event talking to people, giving them the same kind of advice and message, and it was part of the presentation that I gave yesterday as well. But it all sounds good, and you're like, yeah, that does that, okay, I believe you. Like it's logical and feels like it would work if I were able to put it into action. The problem is it's overwhelming. That's a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah,
Like getting that level of hyper personalization just to freaking get the same deal that I got 3 years ago without needing to do that is kind of deflating. And so this is where we bring in AI again. So the trick here is not to just go and rely on AI and have it do all the work. But if you can, you still need to articulate the value that you bring and use those case studies and whatnot. But every time you need to adapt it to a different audience segment, it's not fresh content. It's the same content repositioned, refocused, slightly adjusted for each one of those audience segments. In some cases, it's a little bit more work than others. But what you can do is use AI to extrapolate, to refine, to adjust the initial perspective, thought leadership offering that you have so that it resonates more accurately with each audience segment. And that's where you can get tons of productivity and impact and results from using that technology.
Yeah, I think there's no limit to how you can use that if you have put the work in initially to define all of these things. So, if you've put that time and effort in, then AI assistance to generate and to create and to guide and support, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so you get into that's the kind of the cool thing, the exciting opportunity now is you actually spend less time on producing the content because it's easier and faster and sharper now. And so it feels exciting to be able to increase your volume because I did some work on the trip here and put together a few blog posts and articles and whatnot. Like I maybe produced like 3 or 4 related pieces to support our marketing. In that same amount of time prior to AI, I would have been able to produce 1. Well, so I did 4. So you got to be careful about that because the temptation is to just increase the volume. But what I was doing is taking some other content about our process and how we work and the results that we've had and whatnot, and then adjusting it for our AI service delivery offering that we're introducing now. So the same amount, my point here is the same amount of time, instead of just producing more fresh net new stuff, gets to go into a hyper focused approach and saying, okay, well, wait a minute, if I could just get one of those prospects in the room to work with us, this would have a beneficial outcome. So why not pour my heart and soul into actually trying to target that one account? I'm sure there's other people that will resonate with the same thing, but if I think precisely about that opportunity, it has a higher likelihood of a positive outcome.
Absolutely. And so when we're thinking about the audience and what resonates, it's taking that time to understand your customer first, understand where you bring the most value, and then understanding where they're engaging, how they're engaging with content, with customers, with suppliers, and so on, and then help them with that. Help them to make their decisions, whether that is to work with you or not work with you, but to understand and make an informed decision, really. And I think that's what people want, because there's so much noise now. There's because it's so easy to generate content. There's a lot of crap content out there because of this AI generated nonsense that people just want to make noise and go, look at all the content we're putting out, but no one cares because no one's reading it. And cutting through that noise with highly targeted, specific, and clear communication that adds value, well, that's what separates you from the competition. That's what makes you stand out, and that's what resonates with most audiences, regardless of who your ideal customer profile is.
Yeah, well, that's a great summary. I think that's probably a good way to sort of close this one out and leave people sort of reflecting on that. So, folks, if you've had a good reflection, we'd love to hear about it. If any of this is resonating, drop us a line, get in touch. You can always connect with us on LinkedIn, and you can find our entire back catalog and other ways to get in touch by going to teandtimbits.com. Thanks again, Andy. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Scott.